وهنا عمدنا إلى علينا ما سيئ كنا ما سيئ كنا هو وهنا عمدنا إلى علينا ما سيئ كنا علينا ما سيئ كنا هو. So this is already our third or fourth actually.
Third. Oh, our fourth, yeah.
No, we had four because we had a third one. Yeah. So it's like our fourth actually. But the first two ones were a repetition one of the other. Now last week, which was like Laomer, what we actually looked at, and looking I think is the right term. What we looked at was a beautiful mashal from the Zohar, Lirvod like Laomer, in relation to Oraita, a relation to her. We're talking about ideal last week. This week we're going to talk a bit more betachles, about matters. We'll take from Shara Mitzvot, and you should know that one of the blessings, that's the way my master used to say things, one of the blessings that was granted by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to this world is that Diari did not stay here more than a year and a half.
Blessings?
And it's an extraordinary blessing. Why? Because knowing how we are, had he stayed more than a year and a half, we would already have crystallized everything to the point that we would consider that we would know what is halacha l'maaseh on everything. And one of the reasons that Diari did not stay longer than that is to prevent that type of fall, that type of failure. And we're very good at doing that. I mean, look at what even happened with Chassidut. Chassidut only had excerpts of what Diari was teaching. And even with the excerpts, so they didn't have the whole Shmoneh Sharim, they didn't have all the 8 gates. And even with excerpts, they've actually succeeded to make practices that they have a very hard time coming out of them. And one of the examples is Lisrael. So what is Lisrael? Lisrael is a practice that was given to us, a spiritual practice that was given to us by Diari, on how to relate to Oraita. And even with the excerpts that you had inside Chassidut, one made a whole thing that one has, engraved and set in stone to the point that people can't have a hard time coming out of it today. Now, as any Torah, it's dynamic. And you're going to see in the text, the way that Rabbi Chaim Vital expresses himself, he talks things in total tmimut, total innocence. He says things as they come back to his mind, and then he expresses them back as they're being refreshed in his mind. Any of us would actually do that. What would we do? We would actually edit the text. Particularly in today's, word processor. I mean, word processor is the thing of behind it. Like we're talking about the 80s and 90s, But any type of text editing, what would you do? You wrote something. Suddenly you remember, well, it wasn't exactly like that. You go back on the text and you changed it. But Rabbi Chaim Vital wasn't like that because he understood the dynamic nature of his own limud. And so he invites us to actually do so ourselves. And that's what we're going to see now. Of course, we won't have time to actually take the whole of Parashat Va'etchanan and Shara Mitzvot. You have 8 gates. 8 gates. Okay. 8 gates to what? 8 gates to the Yetzer Chaim. You know Torah, right? I mean, you actually listen to the parasha, no? Or do you read it?
Both.
Both? That's what we're going to look at also. When you actually are supposed to read it and when you're supposed to listen to it. And the Torah tells us that after Adam and Hawa were brought down in this lower realm, what took place? Well, what became protected? What became a protected species of tree? It's a dat tova or it's a chaim? Which one? Parashat Bereshit. What became a protected species? It's a chaim.
It's a chaim.
It's a chaim which is being guarded. It's a datovara has no guard around it, which is the very reason why humanity can continue to amass all this knowledge. It's a datovara, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, is not protected from the very first moment that we actually partook of it. We taste of it. From the moment we tasted of it, are you going to protect this matter that we already took of it? No, of course not. But what we were supposed to be sustained from in a unique manner, which is Etz HaChaim, is what became protected, had a protection. A very, very special protection. I'm not here to talk about that, though it's a fascinating subject. But there are gates to it. And there are 8 gates to it. One of the gates is called Shar HaMitzvot. And in other words, these are the mitzvot that you will accomplish, that you will relate to, that you will engage with deeply. And by engaging with those mitzvot, you will actually have some type of, at the beginning, faint access to Etz HaChaim. And what is that mitzvah we're talking about here? It is the matter we saw in Maseret Shabbat, right? Daf Lamed Aleph, about this question that one would ask you, all of you, as you go up, at Mavesrim, the right time for each one. And which is really the second question, right? Which is basically you answered positive, you answered yes to the first one. Natata v'nasata be'emunah. In other words, your business dealings were done in a way that corresponded to what HaKadosh Baruch Hu had for you, which corresponded to the emunah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had for you. You did so, then if you answer yes to that first question, then one asks us the second. And what is the second? Kavata itim la Torah. Did you appoint times to Torah? So this is the mitzvah that we're going to look at now. And here is what it's written in Shara HaMitzvot, Parashat Va'etchanan. And as we already said, why Parashat Va'etchanan of all the parashiot? Because there are 2 terms that start to appear galore, like in huge abundance in the Torah, from Parashat Va'etchanan. And again, as I told you, don't tell that to particularly if you know Sofer, don't tell him that. Ask him that. Ask him if he knows what starts to appear in Parashat Va'etchanan. And the term that starts to appear in Parashat Va'etchanan is Hashem Elokecha. Before Parashat Va'etchanan, I think you only have 11 or 12, I think. 12 instances of the term Hashem Elokecha before Parashat Va'etchanan. From Parashat Va'etchanan, you have hundreds. You have a switch. And it's a tradition that Hashem Elokecha is actually this gematria of 572, which is the gematria of Kavata. Kuv bet Ayin Tav. Did you appoint? So which is the very reason why this appears now. One of the reasons why it appears in Parashat Va'etchanan. And so he says, "Ve'ata nevaer seder esek haTorah, she'asok ha'adam bechol yom." Now we will explain the order of esek haTorah. Now esek haTorah is being occupied to Torah, but there's a very, 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 very great level of that. And that's not what we are going to deal with. And actually, Diari is going to tell us that, well, he's not going to deal with it in all generality. He's going to give a very specific thing. What is it? He says so that a man would be occupied with it bechol yom. He didn't say kol hayom. He says bechol yom, every day, right? Because we saw we're supposed to partition our time, where the first priority is obviously our business dealings, and to do it be'emunah. And what comes after is actually appointing times to Torah. And why appointing times to Torah? Because the Rashi told us Well, if you don't, by the end, your business dealings will take all your time, you'll have all your worries and all the things that you have to deal with and all the things that have not been finished, the famous things to do list, Most of my things to do lists are not the things that are for tomorrow, they're the things that were for yesterday, seriously, So, so you get caught up with all this, and then by the end, what do? You learn no Torah, So that's why it says, Kavata itim la Torah. He says, we don't talk about the whole of Hesek HaTorah in its generality. Sha'adam kore rak b'kriyat, only in the reading, kriya gvu'a, in the set reading. She'tzarir likro bechol yom b'gvi'ut, that he needs to be able to read, to relate to in a set manner. Besod, the famous statement, Kavata itim la Torah. So in other words, he's going to tell us, how do you actually accomplish that? Sounds a good deal, no?
Can I just remind you, just say, Lilu Nishapana, Dalibat Marcel, Dalibat Marcel, Aaron Ben Shlomo.
Lilu Nishmato Shel Aaron Ben Shlomo, של רעייתו, דליה אודליה בת מרסל. וזה מנהג מוריזה. So what he's going to start by telling you is not really what is his understanding of it. He's going to tell us what he saw his master doing. But contrary to some type of you all know this type of story where you have a Rebbe and his Hasidim, and they were at some type of simcha, and they were coming to Shavuot, the milk and all that, and he has there's 2 jugs of milk on the table, and he looks at one, no, doesn't take it. He takes the second jug of milk and he serves himself from it. The problem is that among the Hasidim, you had the milkman number 1, milkman number 2, corresponding to jug number 1, jug number 2. Everyone who sees the Rebbe not taking from the first jug imagines that it means that, the milk from the first jug is not really, what it should be, not really proper. And so they imagine that it's only from milkman number 2 that really you have proper milk, And so what happens by the end, the milkman number 1 loses his business, or a lot of his business for those Hasidim, and milkman number 2 becomes rich, And milkman number 1 comes back to the Rebbe and says, well, you have to realize what happened there at the Simcha, you ruined my life, And so, can you tell me what was your intention? And he tells them, what he tells him? He tells him something very simple. He said, well, I took the first jug, I looked at it, it was empty, so I thought the second may have some milk, and I served myself from the second one. And that's typically what happens. And so we have here a minhag type of thing. It doesn't mean that what Rabbi Chaim Vital saw at first as a minhag, that what he saw taking place, that means that's halacha. That's the way it is. And you're going to see that he doesn't take it himself as halacha. It just gives you an illustration. And so, of course, you can interpret the illustration totally wrong, totally off, just like with the jugs of milk. You just have to make sure the way you actually understand this. Okay? So he says, after he was coming out of the Beit HaMidrash, and he actually eats his food, so obviously this is now a day of fast, right? He was putting on his talit, enveloping himself in his talit, and he was wearing tefillin. So he was reading this type of limud, this sort of kriya of reading, which will be explained now, and those kavanot that we will explain.
Before the tefillah?
No, as he was coming back home. He was coming back home as he was eating.
I see, okay.
First, what did he do? He was reading what is, written what it should be read from the Torah. ואחר כך נביאים, and after that the text of the prophets. ואחר כך כתובים, after that, you know, the how is the term in English for that? Hagio.
The scriptures.
Yeah, the scriptures. Yeah, well, the scriptures, you know, is like the whole of it, but it says Hagiogra. I forgot what. So he was reading the Ketuvim. ואחר כך Kabbalah. After that, Kabbalah. And after that, Mishnah, and after that, Talmud, after that, Gemara. וטוב הוא שיקרא ג' בחינות שיש בתלמוד, והם ברייתא, תוספתא, ממרא. Well, look at that. ונראה לעניות דעתי, and so suddenly he says, well, you know, it seems to me שהקבלה תהיה אחרונה. In other words, I saw my master do like that. But it seems to me that actually Kabbalah should be at the end and not having Kabbalah, Mishnah, Talmud. אחרונה מכולם, after all of them. לפי שסדר המדרגות, the level of the degrees of the steps, ממטה למעלה, from down to up. הם מתחילים מן המקרא, they start with the מקרא, that is the actual, you know, written Torah. If it's written, it's for you to, you know, it's not written aktav, it's written a michtav, it's written a mikra. Because if it's written, it's for you to read. No. The sofer is only here to serve your reading, not to serve his writing. And so he says, Kodem kol min mikra v'mesayemin, and one actually ends the whole matter beKabbalah. כמו שהתברר, it will be explained בעניין הכוונות, where it will explain with the kavanot. And why is it important he says this? Because 2 times he told us already that actually we will make sense of it through the kavanot. And that's what really will take place. That is, you know, you could say, well, couldn't you apply things without kavanot, apply them properly, and then have kavanot for them? Well, what he's telling you is that the real application is through kavanot. And so here is, so I mean, that you can say is the overall path. Now he gives us details. He says, first he will read what should be read from the Torah, from the parasha. ואם הוא יום ראשון של השבוע, so if it is יום ראשון, so what we are accustomed to call in English Sunday, יקרא 6 פסוקים, he will read 6 פסוקים, הראשונים שבאותה הפרשה, so the first 6 פסוקים that are in the parasha. וביום שני יקרא ד' פסוקים שלאחריהם, so after that, ד' 4 on the second day, ויום שלישי, פסוקים לאחריהם, וביום ד' רביעי 6 פסוקים שלאחריהם, וביום חמישי 5 פסוקים שלאחריהם, וכללות כולם הם חבוו פסוקים. So, how does he do that? First days, he
doesn't finish the parasha.
Of course not. Why would he? So first, no, we're only at 5 days of the week, you know, I mean. So first day he takes 6 psukim. Okay. Second he takes dalet psukim. What does it remind you? It's like the way you break the second matzah. You know, the middle matzah. You break it in the dalet and the wav. The wav is the afikoman, and the dalet is the one will you will relate to at the point of matzat mitzvah. The matzah of the mitzvah. Of what mitzvah? Of the achila. Because that's the mitzvah on Leila Seder, is to actually eat of the matzah. In a mindful way, in a profound way. And what do you keep for the end? The afikoman, that you've hidden. And what is the afikoman? The greater part, the bigger part, which corresponds to the wav. Okay? In a way, that's what is reserved for you for your Yom Rishon, for your Sunday, for the first day of the week. It's your Wav, and only that, after that, your Dalet. So the first day of the week, you take the first 6 psukim of the Torah, of the parasha. Then you take the next 4 psukim on the second day, what we call Monday in English. The third day, you're going to take the next 5 psukim. The fourth day, that we call in English Wednesday, you're going to take the next 6 psukim. And then on Yom Hamishi, which we call in English Thursday, you will take the next 5 psukim. Altogether, you would have had Dalet Wav, He Wav He. So it's like the first days make the Yud of Yud Ke Vav Ke. And then you have He Wav He. And they correspond to what? To, obviously, like Shem Havaya Baruch Hu, to 26. And so you will have reached Yom Hamishi with the first 26 psukim of the Torah. You know? And each Shavua, each parasha, reaching the same level of aliyah, of the 7 aliyot, that, the partitioning of the parasha into 7 pieces of the 7 aliyot. You reach actually all the 7 aliyot by first day? Obviously not. But how far will you be inside the aliyot? Well, each parasha, each week, is a different story. It's a different matter altogether. Now, it says, Veda, כי צריך לקרות כל אלו הפסוקים כדרך שקוראים הפרשה. בערב שבת. כל פסוק מהם 2 פעמים מקרא, ופעם השלישית תרגום. He's telling you have a practice which was obviously a practice which was already present at the time that Diari was here in Tzfat, which was to relate back to the whole parasha on Yom Shishi and read each pasuk twice in the Mikra, in the way it's actually written, and once the Targum.
From the beginning to the end?
Yes.
No,
but he's going to come to that. But he was relating to that because people were used to that already. He was telling them, well, in the same way, how is that called? Shemot, names. Why? Because you relate to the names of God. And why is it called Shemot? Because the Shin and the Mem make Shneim Mikra, 2 times Mikra. And Wav and the Tav of Shemot made the way HaTargum. And once time the Targum. Now Targum means that it was, the translation or the elucidation in Aramaic by some of our greatest sages, and here what is meant is Targum Onkelos. Now, Onkelos is an extraordinary figure. We have what to rely on. And look, and again, if Diari himself was relying on it, who are you not to rely on? Rely on it. So he says, Gam da ki im lo kara mikra beyom echad. If, let's say,
you missed today.
You missed today. So what happened? Well, you missed it, right? Can you actually say you didn't miss it? No, you missed it, no? So, ביום אחד של השבוע, יש לו תקנה. There's actually a way to repair it, but it's limited, and you're going to listen why. שיקרא ביום שני 2 הקריאות שהם של יום ההוא, שלא קרא, that he will read the 2 readings for the 2 days, the day which he had not read yet, וקריאת היום ההוא עצמו, and the reading for the day itself. אבל, but, אין זה מועיל רק לצורך היום השני. It only actually helps, has a quality, has a function for the second day where he is up to date, where he is on time. Because why? He still needs to be reading, imagine this week, okay? So what's the parasha?
Midbar.
So you take parasha Midbar, and what do? You come to the first 6 psukim, but you did not read it. Yom Rishon, missed it. Too bad. Okay? You come to Yom Sheni. Usually, if you miss it Yom Rishon, there's a good reason for you to miss it. Also Yom Sheni. Missed it. You come, it's today Yom Shlishi, and what happens? Well, are you going to jump to the psukim? So which psukim are they? The psukim 11 to 15, right? If you listen to what we just learned now. Just trying to put you in application here. So psukim 11 to 15 of the parasha. If you miss the first 10 psukim, are you going to jump to the pasuk 11 and continue from there? Obviously not. What sense does it make in your relation to the parasha? But his point is to tell you, will it help for Yom Rishon and Yom Sheni? No. Did you do what you had to do in Yom Rishon and Yom Sheni? No. But in order to reach the greeting of Yom Shlishi, you're going to need that. So you're going to need the Yom Rishon and Yom Sheni because you can't just take Oraita for granted and take her cheaply and actually say, you know what, I ignored you, Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, here I am, Yom Shlishi, Take the mashal we had last week from the Zohar, it's like this type of husband, that says, look, you didn't see me all these days, but aren't you glad I'm here? No, seriously, right? None like me. So, by the end, you have to somehow make up for it. But when you say make up for it, it doesn't mean that you actually corrected your absence. You did not correct your absence. But for the third day, you need the first 2 days. So you have to read back. And why is that important? Because you see, that's something where Halacha leMaaseh, and that I can say was the practice of my master, and that has been the practice mostly of the Chachamim of Yeshiva Mekubalim Betel. When you come to having missed, it's not so much in our habitude to actually miss, but if you've come to miss, Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, typically, you come to Yom Shlishi, what are you going to read? Are you going to take all that you were supposed to read in question of Nevi'im, Ketuvim, all of that, all of this limud that you had in association with the rest of your psukim? The answer is no. No, because the only thing you were supposed to have is what? Or the psukim of Torah. That is the essence of what you have to catch up. Okay, so much the more because you do not in a way catch up really truly, but it's only for the sake of the reading of Torah. Only on the psukim of Torah that you did not read yet, you're going to read them in order not to skip them. Because the base for the whole limud, when it says kavata etim la Torah, these are the psukim of Torah. That's the base of the limud. Nothing else. Nothing else. Everything else is in order to relate to it. Everything that comes, whether it's Nevi'im, Ketuvim, Mishnah, Gemara, Talmud, whatever order you take it, it's only in order to relate to the Torah.
But you've skipped the rest of it.
What do you mean you skip the rest of it? The rest of what?
You've got the 20 in the week. You've got the 26 pasukim. But what about the rest of the parasha?
No, but we're talking now about what do you do in question of Nevi'im, Ketuvim, and that. But the rest of the parasha, we're going to come to the parasha. Only on Thursday yet, right? I mean,
Okay.
Like typically, what Yari would practice here, he's after coming back from the Bet Midrash. Very interestingly, because it's not written that he was coming back from the Tfilat Shacharit. Pay attention. He was saying that he was coming back from the Bet Midrash. So it's very well possible that he was coming back from the Bet Midrash in the afternoon. It doesn't say that it was in the morning. In no way it says that.
Interesting.
There's a lot that people assume here, but it doesn't mean that. And obviously, since he was wearing tefillin, it means it was be'oryom. It was still inside the day, right? Because you would not be wearing tefillin in the evening. So it was inside the day, and we'll see in the learning that he himself considers that this learning is only for the day. In fact, kavata itim la Torah, one of the surprises we're going to have here is when is it When is it that you're supposed to, set appoint times for Torah? And in the first 5 days, we're going to have a very nice little surprise. And so he says this. So he will read, Shikrat Tehila Kriyat Yom Shelefanav Shedileg, right? So he will first read the reading that was corresponding to the day that he actually skipped. And after that, he will read the reading which actually corresponds in the Torah to this very day. Okay? So for example, today, Psukim 11 to 15 of Parashat Bamidbar. Okay? Mm-hmm. So, but if you do that, again, as we said, if you did not read on Yom Rishon and Yom Sheni the first 10, the first 6, and the first 4, then you have to read all of them. Aval letzorer hayom shelo kara, but for the need of the yom of the day that he did not read, ein lo tikkun klal. He doesn't have the slightest way of repairing that. Okay, you have to realize that. There's no ways of repairing it. And he says, when ve'alav nemar, and on the matter is said, me'uwat lo yuchal litkon. He says, a matter which is crooked, you can't put straight. From Megillat Kohelet. A matter which is crooked, you can put straight. So he had crooked ways in the first 2 days, let's say, okay, and he did not relate to the Torah. So you can't put it back straight what you make crooked on first day and second day, but at least you can make sure that your third day, let's do it correctly. And says, V'achar yikra nevi'im. So after that, nevi'im. V'kol pasuk yikranu bet pa'amim mikra v'chatargum. And at this point, he says, and again, as I told you, he doesn't use a text editor. He's not here to correct himself. He says one thing and he can correct himself just after, and that's not a problem. Just like for you, it shouldn't be a problem. You did things in a certain way, then you've realized that there was a better way, and you're doing things differently, and you don't play that game of saying, I always did it in that good way. No, you did it crooked one, quite a few times. You had quite a few years where you weren't exactly in the right, art. You could have done it better. And when you come to do it better, then you accept that, look, I have a better way now. That's all, and there's no need to invent yourself a story that you did it perfect from the beginning. No need. Won't help you, won't help others, no one. And so he says, V'kol pasuk yikranu bet pa'amim 2 times and mikra chatagum. Umatzati katuv. You see, that's where I tell you the text editor is not there. Umatzati katuv, and I found written bekun trasi in my little booklet. He has a little contrast, a very interesting term, the term contrast, by the way. But he had his little contrast in his little booklet, just like our dear Reb Noah has here. So he had in his little booklet, and he says, Shekol pasuk mehem yikranu pa'am achat mikra ve'pa'am echat targum. And so in other words, he said, well, look, I thought it was 2 times Mikra and 1 time Targum, but I realized that actually in my little pamphlet where I record what Yari told me for certain, it's not like that. So in other words, he's saying what concerns the psukim of the Torah is Shnai Mikra ve'Echat Targum. That's certain. But then as soon as you start to reach the Nevi'im, it's only once. Once the Mikra and once the Targum. And not twice. And says, Ve'achar kar yikra ketuvim im hatargum shelahem, ve'achar kar yikra al seder, haniskar le'el, Mishnah, Talmud, ve'chule. Okay, so you have Mishnah, Talmud, Obviously, there's Talmud, Gemara, Be'ez Hashem, he didn't say Talmud Bavli. Ve'hine.
What's ve'chule if there was no Zohar?
No, Kabbalah. That's what he said, Kabbalah.
What's Mishnah and Talmud?
Sorry?
What's Mishnah and Talmud then?
Mishnah and Talmud is Mishnah, and then Gemara, and then Kabbalah, and so Kabbalah will see, what it can be. I'm not going to reveal all that now because then, it was kind of forfeit our learning later on. Maybe we'll get ahead of ourselves. So he says, Ve'ine beleilot ein tzarir likro gviut hazeh. In other words, in the night, there is no such thing as doing this. Okay? Kavata itim la Torah doesn't apply to your nights. At least not in the first 5 nights. Okay? So you can always try to play the chassid, but it won't help you. Now, when we say kavata itim la Torah, you have to understand that the greatest, poskim, whether it's the Torah or they've all been very clear that the obligation of kavata itim la Torah, have you appointed times to Torah, is the only reason for an Issachar Zevulun partnership. Okay, you hear it? So in other words, if you have a type of Issachar Zevulun partnership, in other words, you are paying someone to do Limud Torah, it makes absolutely zero sense that on your side you would be accomplishing this thing of Gviut Itim La Torah, that you would be applying this thing that we're learning here. It makes no sense. Because you're supposed to rely on him to do it. And most likely he doesn't know the thing you're learning here, so he even is not doing it. So you're paying him to do something that he's actually not doing correctly. Okay, and so, where is the Issachar Zevulun partnership there? Like, it's a failing one. It's a terrible one. And so, you can even come to the beautiful point where you actually reverse dynamics. You still pay him something, but not a Issachar Zevulun partnership, but that's tzedakah. And then you come to the point where you accomplish that properly, and you start giving him less, and less, and less. And when he asks you why, you say, well, because actually, the fact is that by me giving you less, I'm making sure that you pay me for doing, and by the end, I am the Issachar, and you're the Zevulun, because that's what happens here. And it's one of the best ways to grow the awareness of Torah in its profoundness with people around you. So you make sure you continue to give him. But then you start, once you actually really engage with things properly, and when you feel that you really engage with things properly, you give him less and less and less and less and less, till the point that himself will do it. Okay? That's usually how you get people to get things going, And then he says, "Veine beleilot en tzarir likro gviut hazeh uvesof adrush hazeh nevaer nyan leilot." He says, by the end of the drush, we explain what about the nights and what's the property of it. It says, "Omnam nevaer ata," but still we will explain one thing here. Inyan leil shishi. When is leil shishi?
Friday night.
Right? What is leil shishi? The night of Friday. But when is that?
Oh, Thursday night.
No, that's what's called in bad English Thursday night, right? Because you even in English, the Torah is written even in English in the translation of Maaseh Bereshit, right? And what tells you there was when will tell you on this? There was a night, there was a morning, Yom Shishi.
Right.
And so what is that night corresponding to Shishi, Yom Shishi? So if you would say there was in English, you would say there was a night, there was a morning. It's Friday, right? So what is Friday night? It's the night from Thursday to Friday.
That's right.
That's what Torah tells you. But we got so accustomed to the wrong way of naming things that now we say Friday night to actually mean Leil Shabbat, to mean the night from Friday to Shabbat. But actually, Friday night should mean in your mouth, it should actually mean the night from Thursday to Friday. And there's no other way of looking at it. That's the way that Torah expresses it. And if you don't say anything like that, then you contradict, it's like you contradict Torah the way it's written. So it is called Friday night, okay? Which people don't understand usually, but it's called actually the night from Thursday to Friday. And so on that night, which is called Leil Shishi, because on that night there is a difference. So if there's really one night where you really have to set aside to actually do some things differently, it's the night from Thursday to Friday. Not Leil Shabbat. Mm-hmm. Not the night of Shabbat, but the night of Thursday to Friday. והוא כי אז בליל שישי תקרא בקומך ממיטתך, from as you will rise from your bed, אחר חצות, after חצות לילה, after, the halachic midnight. ואם תוכל לקום, תקרם קודם. ואם לא תוכל לקום, תקרם קודם, שתישן. Shisha Westrim Psukim. So in other words, he's telling you, well, so you have those that can actually rise up from their bed on Chatzot Laila on the night from Thursday to Friday. Happy is their share. And then when you do that, then you are supposed to relate to then what? The next 26 Psukim, right? So we had the first 26 Psukim till Thursday. And then we have the next 26 in the night of Thursday to Friday. And he says, and if you are of the weak ones that can't get up from your bed after Chatzot Laila, right? Then what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to relate to those 26 psukim, not at the point that you're doing shaharit, not at the point that you are doing some kind of things, but what he says, kodem shetishan, before you sleep. So if you know, typically on Friday evening, so I'm meaning what people call usually Thursday evening, but it's like totally off. So then the evening, what I call, to make things clear, the evening following the Thursday. Okay, is that okay? The evening following the Thursday. So in the evening following the Thursday, you know that you don't have the strength to actually wake up at the point of Chatzot Laila. Then what are you going to do? You're going to take the next 26 psukim in the Torah, and you're going to relate to all of them. Now, here, pay attention to the way he says it. 20, 6 ו-20 פסוקים, אחרים, שלאחריו החפווה פסוקים, שקראת בהי ימים הראשונים. So in other words, he's telling you, take the 26 psukim that are after the first 26 that you actually already read and you related to in the first 5 days of the week, של השבוע. ואחר כך תקרא מה שתרצה כמנהגך, and after that you will learn whatever you are used to learn, but any learning on the night which follows the first day, so the night from the first day to the Friday, has to include those 26 psukim that come after the first 26, and anyone who doesn't do so is to the least an amaretz, he's an ignorant, and and what can be done from that fellow, I don't know. So, okay, because that's not the way it works. Now, at that point, are you supposed to take Shnei Micha ve'Echad Targum? Well, there's Chalukei Deot on that. There's very different ways. There was a different way that the Ben Ishchai, for example, was doing in Baghdad, and different way that Chachmei Beit were doing. We'll go to that matter soon. Personally, I go the way of my master, which is, and when I say that, there was a time when actually I did it the way of the Ben Ishchai, just to be clear. But I said, you have your practices. Some of you do something, sometimes you realize that you can do it better, and you change it. And so there you would have 26 psukim that you don't do Shnei Mikra ve'Echad Targum, you just relate to the next 26 psukim, not twice, only once, and no Targum. That has been actually a practice. Okay? Now, he continues and says, have we question of time? About 15 minutes left now?
6 minutes.
Oh,
We started 5 minutes late. You go.
what do you say? He says, Uvayam Shishi, as tikra kol aparasha kula. He says, but Yom Shishi, you're going to relate back to the whole parasha. So you're going to start from the beginning. Mitchila ve'ad sofa, from its beginning till its end. Shnai mikra ve'Echad Targum. 2 times pasuk, and then Targum once.
And that's Friday.
And that's Friday.
Okay.
Typically Friday morning. But again, he didn't tell you Friday morning. Typically people do it Friday morning. But if you can only do it Friday afternoon, do it Friday afternoon. It's better than not doing it. ובערב שמחת תורה, אף על פי שאינו ערב יום שבת קודש, though, the day before Simchat Torah doesn't have to be Yom Shabbat Kodesh, Tikra, Parasha, Wezot HaBeracha, Shnei Mikra ve'Echad Targum. So you will also have this practice on the eve of Simchat Torah, even when it's not a Friday itself. Weda, ki bechol Erev Shabbat, אחר שתסיים הפרשה ההיא, שני מקרא ואחד תרגום, תכפול פסוק האחרון, shel parasha mikra velo targum. In other words, the last pasuk of the whole parasha, you will say it again without the targum. Okay? So that's the general practice. He says, Gamda כשתקרא המקרא צריך לקרותו עם ניגון הטעמים. אשר בפסוקים ההם. He says, when you take any of the mikra, you actually have to relate to the nigunim, to what in English people call the trop.
Even on Monday, Tuesday, even the first 5 days.
So much the more the first 5 days, yes. אבל שתקראנו Targum, אין צורך לקרותו בניגון הטעמים. When you say the Targum, you don't have to have any type of טעמים, any type of trop, any type of cancellation on it. כי אין טעמים אלא במקרא לשון הקודש. Only in לשון הקודש, only in Hebrew, you actually have טעמים, שלא כדברי הנוהגים לקרוא אף התרגום בניגון הטעמים של הפסוק ההוא. There was in his time, and that was the way of the Jews that were from, for example, Haleb and Egypt, etc., the Jews that were here, not the Sephardim, not the Ashkenazim, but the Jews that had been locally. There was such a matter, and you can find it in the Old Sidurim, where one was taking the Targum and was applying Tamim Mikra of the Pasuk on it. But the Ari is saying, well, it doesn't exist today anyway, but he was saying just don't do that. So much the more if he tells you don't do that, he's telling you make sure to apply the Nigunim on the Psukim of the Torah. Okay? And so, if you tell me, well, I don't know Tamim Mikra. Well, I'll tell you, you'll get there. And it should be some of your highest priorities to actually get there. Okay? And so, in other words, part of Chok Lisrael and part of this whole practice and relating to Torah, there is obviously of learning of the Tamim Mikra. There's obviously of that. And that is part of the learning. So one can make sure that at the beginning one starts by learning Torah and yet learning, the Tamim Mikra. And pay attention, you have one of the best exercises possible each week. Not talking to you about Friday. Friday you have the whole parasha, okay? That's tough. But it's one of the best exercises each day. First day, it's only 6 psukim. 6 psukim relating to them with the Tamim Mikra. At the beginning, you may do it, I'm sorry to use the term, but like a monkey, okay? At the beginning, you may actually just hear once, read it properly to you, and you read back after him. But already that is something. Already that is starting to be there. You know what I mean? And then you start to relate to it deeper and deeper. The same thing goes with each and every piece you're going to learn. The Nevi'im, do you really relate deeply to what the text of the Nevi'im say? At the beginning, no, obviously not. Ketuvim, same thing goes here. Mishnah, same thing goes here. Gemara, same thing goes. Gemara, can you take a Gemara on your own and actually, just like that, open a daf of Gemara and actually make sense of it? No. It's the same matter. It's a different thing. It's a different challenge. But you have the challenge of the Gemara. You have the challenge of the Tamim Mikra. But it's part of the process. Okay? Can we take just a few more minutes or no? Okay, so he's here. So he says, just to finish that paragraph. וביום שבת אין צורך לקרות הפרשה.
Wow.
Okay? So on Shabbat, there is no need to read the parasha. רק לשומעה, only to hear her.
Oh.
כולה, מפי השליח ציבור הקורא בספר תורה. In other words, he's telling you, when you get an aliyah to the Torah, and if you know to read the Sefer Torah, the Tamim Mikra, don't read it for showing off to others that you know how to read it. Because you are not then relating to the Torah the way you should relate to her. Do it as a service to others who need to hear her. The point of my master was saying, in the ideal world, there is no Shaliach Tzibur. And the Torah is being heard every Shabbat morning. From the Sefer Torah. spiritually, it's being heard from the Sefer Torah without anyone needing to read. That's in the ideal world. But in the lower world, what do you need? You need a Shaliach Tzibur. And the Shaliach Tzibur is the one who comes and reads the Torah. So he is a servant. He is a servant to your relating to the Torah. But pay attention. He's doing you a favor, but he's doing himself a disfavor because there is no need for him to read the Torah, and he is not hearing her.
Wow.
And that's why we say Hazach. That's why we give them brachas for having done it.
And normally, that's exactly the matter of giving a bracha to the one who actually read, because he's at a loss. You're the winner, he's the loser. That's the truth of the matter. And so he says, but don't make fun of him, okay? He served you. אבל ההפטרה של יום השבת, but the ההפטרה תקראנה בפיך ואל תסמוך על המפטיר. In other words, he's saying, read it yourself and do not rely on the one who is reading maftir. Because this time he's doing it for himself. When someone is doing maftir, he is doing it for himself. It's a selfish thing. He is not in no way serving you, and this is not to the service of the tzibur. He is doing it for his own self. Okay? Which is one of the reasons why that some of our sages consider that the one who's doing maftir, that he can do it, in particular for the neshama or for departed one, because his kriya has actually a meaning. He is supposed to read it. So, and the one who will be saying Kaddish will be himself. So, so it's good that he himself reads it. ואל תשמור על המפטיר, זולתי אל הברכות. זולתי אל הברכות שמברך לפניה ולאחריה. Apart, the only thing that you rely on the maftir are the brachot that he will say before Haftarah and after Haftarah. You rely on his brachot. You're not going to say yourself your own brachot. You rely on his brachot. Okay? And he says, one has to make sure that you actually habituate and your ears or have this kavanah leshom'am. So in other words, this time it will not be to listen to the kriya. It will not be to listen to the reading like of the Sefer Torah like it was for the parasha, but it will be to listen to the brachot that he is saying, that he is mevarech. So his brachot, the brachot of the haftarah, that he says before and after, you have to, that's the point where you shouldn't be talking. Of any point, you shouldn't be talking bichlal, but so much the more not that point. And you should actually relate deeply to his bracha. ולענות אחריהם אמן, of course. ובשעת התפילות בעניין יום השישי ביארנו זמן קריאת הפרשה, שניהם קרא בהערת הגום, ואם שכח מה שיעשה, ואין שם. In other words, we'll see there when we come to it about יום שישי. יום טוב.